It wasn't long ago I noticed a strange noise coming from the air conditioning unit in the wall of the living room. At first, it was almost imperceptible from the other noises such a device would typically make. It started out as a slight clanking noise, only when it was first turned on. I had just accredited it to the age of the apartments and the appliances within. Realistically, they weren't all that old in the grand scheme of things, but without constant upkeep, things break down and eventually fall apart relatively fast. Everything in the place made at least some kind of noise. The washing machine shook, the dishwasher sounded like a jet taking off, and the fridge would kick on every few minutes and hum so loudly I'd have to turn the television up to hear anything over it. So you can see how it wasn't such a big deal for the air conditioner to rattle a little. So I put it in the back of my mind, just as something that comes with age. That was until it started making it more and more often. I first noticed it when I turned it on and the rattling didn't just go away after a second or two. I had better tell the landlord so maintenance can come fix this, I thought. After about a minute it once again stopped and the thought faded into memory. A few weeks passed and I began to notice other strange occurrences. Scratching in the walls, the electricity flicking in and out, the occasional thump in the night. Again, things that all could happen due to the age of the wiring. Maybe a mouse had gotten into the walls, or a noisy new neighbour had moved in. All pretty explainable, I thought. Besides, I worked a lot, and I didn't really have a lot of free time to do much, so it didn't really bother me. But when things started to go missing in my tiny one-bedroom apartment, I started to worry. I hadn't been home in what felt like a couple of weeks. Between work and friends, I was barely there at all besides to sleep and bathe. I figured I should just do a thorough search of the place and see what things could have gone. The TV remote, the calculator, several pairs of socks, and one shoe were all apparently misplaced. So I went through room to room, which was only 4 rooms. Search high and low to find my things. As I did this, I noticed more and more. Small, ineffectual things were also missing. Strange, I thought. Where could these things have gone? I hit the power button on the TV and sat down in my once familiar armchair, now a stranger in my own forgotten home, and noticed something. The TV wasn't on. I flipped the light switch up and down, but nothing. Oh, for God's sakes, this is getting a little ridiculous. I got up and twisted the knob on the stereo. Nothing. I went around and tested all the appliances to see if they were all still functioning. To no avail, as not a thing in their place was still functioning, except, strangely enough, the increasingly loud air conditioner. It came on with a loud rattle, and ran that way for several minutes until it sparked. I heard a loud pop, and then it too died. Maybe the power's out, and it will be fine in the morning, I thought half-heartedly. I had a hard time sleeping that night. The neighbours were especially loud, and being without power made me nervous. I woke up the next morning to find that power was still out. I took a shower, got dressed, and went over to my neighbour's house to ask if they were having similar problems. I knocked loudly several times, but no answer. I decided enough was enough and went down to the maintenance office to complain and hopefully resolve this issue. When I opened the door, the smell of stale smoke swept into my nostrils. The place was a mess. Paper and ashes all about the desk. Peeling paint, smudges on the windows, and a TV with only static bolted to the wall. Sitting behind the desk was a thin, greying man who looked as though he hadn't bathed in a week. I told him about how everything was suddenly not working but the AC unit until it spotted its last. He gave me a sarcastic look, and with a gruff he grabbed his toolbox and followed me back to my apartment. You see, I would have called, but for some reason nothing seems to be working, and I didn't think the electricity is out because the air conditioner was running until it suddenly died. Well, let's take a look at it, he said. He went over to it and unscrewed the faceplate and peered inside. He clicked his flashlight on it and went to work unscrewing and checking different things, when he suddenly stopped and pulled out a tiny thing attached to a cord that looked like it didn't belong. He looked at me and with a raised eyebrow. "This yours?" I couldn't even identify what he's holding. "I don't believe so. What is it?" "It's one of those little spy cameras. You haven't been having girls over and secretly tapping him, have you?" He gave a sly grin. "No, what the hell is that doing in my home?" I was getting scared and a little irate. He shrugged. "Well, let's see where the wire goes, huh?" He followed the wire with his hands and stopped to look inside. "There's a little hole in there. It goes into the wall." He pulled out a hammer and got to work taking chunks out of the drywall. Following the cord, I was freaking out. Who put that there? Was this the dirty man watching me? And were there more of those? All these things went through my head as I watched him work. "Well, that explains a lot," he said underneath his breath. What is it?" I exclaimed. "Looks like somebody rewired your outlets over here." He backed away to show me what he was seeing. "But why?" "My guess? Stealing your power." "You sure you didn't notice anything?" His calmness put me on edge. I thought back to the odd noises in my walls, the thumping, the flickering lights. What had once seemed such a normal thing had my heart racing. I only noticed a few things here and there, but I hadn't been here a lot lately. I thought it was just an old place. He gave me a skeptical look and continued following that ever-expanding bunch of wires and cables throughout the place. Some wires would branch off to more tiny cameras, hidden in vents and just in the shadows. Even one wired to the eye of one of my pictures. How have I not noticed these? My heart had started beating faster and faster as he discovered more. He kept going, and one by one found all of my electric had been rewired to the one central bunch that led to my bedroom. My heart stopped. "How long have these been here?" "Not long, I'd say. We check all the appliances and outlets before we rent the places out." "Well, where does it all lead?" He kept knocking holes with his hammer and following the dreaded cables until finally he stopped and looked into the most recent hole he made with a flashlight. "The space between the walls gets a lot bigger here. I think I can fit in here, and I see something glowing just around the corner." He smashed a hole big enough for him to squeeze through and disappeared into my bedroom wall. He appeared a few seconds later with a grim look on his face, and his skin had gone pale. He was no longer calm, apparently fearless man he had been before. "You ain't gonna want to hear this, but there's a little room back there. Bunch of monitors set up all over and all sorts of crap scattered around. Looks like somebody was living in there, but no sign of them now." He swallowed hard. "This place is starting to freak the hell out of me. If I were you, I'd move." I packed my things and left for my mum's that day, not wanting to spend another second in the place. Over the next few days, the police came and investigated the whole scene. They found 20 different monitors, all linked up to VHS players in that little room in the walls. Surprisingly though, there were no tapes ever found, and neither was the thing that had been watching me all those nights. A few weeks had passed, and a box arrived at my mother's doorstep. It was unlabeled, but inside was all the little things that had gone missing in my apartment. I also found a dirty, ripped-up piece of paper that had barely legible message scrawled on it. "I like your new place much better. Credit, Harry Monsterman."